just love the way you put that so clearly and concisely. It's just so well said because
Well,
you're saying the connection to your passion can be made and you should go with your strength. What I tend to notice,
mhm,
kids tend to go with their strength. What the struggle for parents and kids ends up being is I think we as parents see our kids having greater potential and may not look at them for what really they are, but we look at them for what they could be. We know where they are, which isn't a bad thing because then we can see and track that progression. You can get there and you can do this. I think there's a clash that goes on between what we want for them and what they
yes.
want for themselves. And I think this is the disconnect that's occurring. What skills do you believe are most valuable right now than any specific major or credential? What skills, actual skills?
I think they're the skills that are those soft skills. There's starting to be a lot more research of Gen Z and on a motivational syndrome, which is very Gen Z. It's one I've read a lot about recently, again, having some Gen Z kids, working with some folks. And one of the things that we get from that, these are kids who came up in COVID, who came up completely online in an all digital world. So there's a certain amount of their life that was disconnected in those formative years that we learned some of those things. So they didn't get even more of, if you talk about a millennial or like a Gen X, we got some emotional intelligence over the years that we was learned across the way. Gen Z missed all of those years. So being able to tie into regulating their emotion into this job is not perfect. It doesn't do exactly what I want when I want. My manager doesn't love me. They don't give me a compliment and a pat on the back every day. They don't think I'm awesome. They fussed at me because I did something wrong. And so they don't have some of those emotional intelligence skills. So it's being able to manage some of those. You're not going to love your job every day. And I don't care who you are, you're not going to love your job every day. There are always the nitty gritty, boring parts of work that some days are the things that we do. So the skill that we need is those communication skills, is those self-regulation skills, is those I need to ask for feedback. I need to ask the for a mentor conversation, not a manager conversation. And to understand where those differences are, kind of tying back into those early questions that you asked, I need to know how to sit beside that boss and go, they told me these things and they were incredibly constructive about it as your manager because they're trying to improve you. But they didn't see that in a mentorship coaching way. They saw it as pick, 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 pick.
Yes, critical and judgmental maybe, and you're not good enough. Get this
Mhm.
right, get back to me compared to. So I that aspect there, what I'm noticing in the last, and I've been in the school system for about 24 years now. Prior to that, I was in the hospital system. Prior to that, I was in the business field, in sales, as you know, and in marketing. What I notice now in the school system in the last 15 years, there's the approach of, let's say, the growth mindset. We're encouraging kids to make mistakes, learn from mistakes. Don't worry, you're learning still. It's great when you're in, until seventh and eighth grade, but then you're in a different place when you're in high school, in a much different place in college. And we're going to move you along. We're going to develop you. That kind of a model is being spoken about in some of the literature. And I'm getting the sense that this quiet type of quitting that goes on, or this avoidance of staying and sticking to a job, is somewhat tied into, well, I'm not getting the feedback I want. I'm not being encouraged. I'm being spoken down to. I'm not being respected. I'm somewhat being disrespected. And just because I'm 23 or 25 and I'm doing the same job as that guy who's 35 and that lady who's 40, and why shouldn't I get as much as them when I'm doing the same job just as good? So I think. So
Yeah.
you've got this clash, yet those people have been and paid their dues. So this is there. And I'm not going to go into the other stereotypes. We can talk about that later. How do you put all that together when you have kids who you can see that that's loud and clear, that's coming through? They're used to a different type of model of being taught. Do you see that? And does that happen?
I 1,000%
Yeah.
I see it. And that's I think where we're still trying to maybe figure out what do we do? Because there's a crazy expectation And it may go back to you were talking about like that parent letting go a few minutes ago about, what the parent's expectation is and how that works. So as parents, when we look at our kid, we look at, little baby Sally, that we had this dream that she was going to be a famous actress or a doctor or whatever. And then it turns out Sally hates the stage and is terrible at science, but she's an amazing writer. And so, that's hard as a parent to make those adjustments. But in the same kind of way, we've umbrellaed or we've shoved her into, no, you have to do this because that's what I want of you.
Mm,
But we've also kind of put a certain amount of over complimenting Sally over the years. And you see this, I saw this in like, active, maybe like travel sports and a lot of this. Well, if Bobby can't be on the starting lineup, we'll just quit and go to the other baseball team or the
yeah.
other soccer team or the other whatever team. Well, I've seen Bobby play and I don't understand why Bobby's on the roster. But I get your dream is that Bobby is going to make it to the major leagues. I get you want that. I mean, what parent doesn't want their kid to be amazing at whatever it is? But that doesn't mean that they are. I will never forget, I had a really good friend, and when his kid was about 4 or 5 years old, he's standing there talking to me, and he's like, Aaron, watch it. Watch him pitch. His 4-year-old. And he says, can't you see it? He's going to be a major league pitcher one day. And I was like, are you kidding me? He's 4. Well, so if Bobby's grown up his whole life with mom and dad over here saying, you're a major league pitcher, and there's no attachment to any real validation of anything that says that, then it's really hard when Bobby gets into a workforce to not have some self awareness that maybe he's not the best thing at pitching, or maybe he does have more growth that needs to come. He may be an amazing pitcher, but like Kobe Bryant still had a coach in the championship. Michael Jordan talked often about Phil Jackson and having a coach in those games. So just because you are really good, so let's say Bobby's great at being a pitcher, he still needs a coach. He still has work and growth and development. The game is always changing. There's always ways to improve. Bobby may be absolutely terrible, but if he doesn't have any way to regulate that, again, it's something he did at 10 or 12. How do we ask Bobby to do that at 22?
I one of the things I appreciate about your approach and the work you do is that you don't speak in absolutes, but you seem to have a unique ability to see both sides of a situation at the same time, and that's become increasingly rare. And you break it down so well. I just want to compliment you about that because whenever I hear you speak, it's just I'm right there with you. Welcome to Pivot Point Strategy for Change. I'm Nick Michael. This episode is part of our ongoing series, the Gen Z Launch Gap: Navigating College, Career, and the Transition to Adulthood. Throughout this series, we've been exploring one of the defining pivot points facing families right now, the moment when preparation meets reality